out. This here is a gnome. It's my dad's gnome. Back in the day, had it here at this house, and it got buried under leaves and dirt and time and got forgotten by undergrowth, and it was just real gross. I found it while digging in the yard a while ago. Gave him a good clean up. You can see, like, it's got a break in the hat here. Pretty intense. There's another break down here you can't really see. It's full of bugs, and just poor little guy had been through a lot. He used to have this bright red hat, this nice green-blue shirt, which is mostly eroded here. Some like really cute little brown boots, black soles on those, and then I forget what color his pants were. I think they were yellow. It's really hard to pick up any color on there. But so I'm going to be repairing this guy, trying to bring him back to tip-top shape, give him a good seal, and keep him happy in gardens for years to come. So first, kicking it off by, after cleaning, obviously, repairing this patch. Gonna use some epoxy sculpt. This air dry clay. It's fantastic. Doesn't need to be under much pressure. I assume he'll be in a nice place after this, and should be good, because God knows I wouldn't know how to put this guy in an oven. Now, epoxy sculpt isn't particularly strong, and it doesn't hold a rigid edge well. It's usually better to put over a scaffold of some kind. So the first thing I've done is taken some tinfoil in here, and I've kind of fitted about half a sheet into the hat here and used it to finish out the look of this guy's little hat. So now I'm gonna layer the polymer clay over this and help complete that hat. Now what I've done here is very lightly lay in some hot glue just to hold that in place while we're sculpting on it. It doesn't need to be a big reinforcement or anything, but the less wiggling it does, the better. When the epoxy sculpt eventually dries, it will constrict slightly, holding the entire thing in place, but for right now, a little bit of hot glue around that seam, and if you can see under there a little bit. Right, so I've applied the air dry epoxy clay here, and you can see it's gone over in a nice patch. These guys are usually cast, but they're made from sculpts. So these kind of lawn gnomes, that kind of thing, are sculpted by hand normally out of clay or some other material, and so they've got this nice rustic like texture to them that comes from sculpting tools. If I just laid the clay on top of here and kept it all smooth and nice, it would have looked very weird once it was painted. It would have been an obvious patch. The difference in texture would have been highlighted dramatically, even more so by the sealant at the end, because that adds a little bit of gloss, which highlights any edges. So what I've kind of done is I've taken some sculpting tools, and after laying in that nice, plain, kind of very thin layer you can see on there, what I've done is I've tried to emulate some of the scratches and nicks and things they have going on. Like there's a little bit of a rotational pattern they have going around here. Focus thing. And I've kind of emulated that a bit here, and then I've got a little bit of the inset just to get that leather or little cloth hat kind of vibe. This is extra important because when this dries, I wanted to, if I could, disguise the seam. So where this meets this, it'll still be a different material. It'll be slightly raised, even just a hair. And so in order to try and make that disguise as much as possible, make it blend nicely, I've tried to make that a really messy and kind of different height and textured seam there. In a way that you would, the inverse would be if I just kept it nice and uniform, the eye's going to pick up a nice smooth line normally, which is why you see a lot of the etches and nicks and things right on that edge. So we give this about an hour or two to dry. Hopefully that makes me nice and happy. And then I'm going to do some testing in the meantime to see if I can get some either primer paints or if I can go right in with some maybe acrylic or something like that and mix the right tones to bring this guy and back to life and help him pop in the yard.
What I've got here is a old Chinese food container, and I'm mixing some paints from my big old paint tub, and I'm beginning to try and match colors on this guy, so you can see his little headpiece is dried there. I'm beginning to get in some colors. So the brown was easy, of course, it's just wood, but now I'm trying to match the color on his jacket. You can see here my first attempt was incorrect, but now I've got a nice like dull teal going on, and it's real nice. So I'm just dry brushing this on there for the most part. It's important to note that this is going to require multiple coats for obvious reasons. And I'm going to go in with slightly different colors later and begin shading after I get the flat coats all done. This color, for example, is made out of a very nice neon green a pretty bright blue and a kind of mustardy brown. These two together made a nice teal color, but it was way too vibrant. The brown really brings it down. That yellow tone in there is going to really mute it, and that's what gave us that nice teal color that we're going to use. It's more of like a slatish teal. So the painting process begins to try and get this guy nice and happy. Getting the skin tone, pretty simple, I think. He's going to have a big old white beard, mustache. Pants, I did a green base, but I think they were yellow, if I remember correctly. And I have no idea what his boots were initially. I would assume black. Having them be brown would be odd just because it's right next to the wood. But black also feels like it'd be way too strong of a color. And it faded like, well, a lot. I have like a little bit of color to go off here on the edge, but it's really hard to make out what that might have been. So, might have to experiment, do a few layers of paint. But
Alright, so here's a paint update. I've done 1 layer of paint on most of this guy. It's working out okay, I think. So the brown, looking pretty nice. I went and darkened it up. Skin is like a pink right now. It's a little too pink, I think, but skin is one of the hardest ones to get with a flat color. So it's going to be, you know, it's going to owe a lot to some shading. Get a little rosy cheeks in there maybe, a little red nose. Green matched on the jacket very nicely, that kind of dark teal. Pants were originally lime, went with like this blue for like more of a classic look. And I originally did brown on the boots, thought it went way too like close to what this was doing, so went for more of a black leather, which felt more drastic at the time, but actually doesn't work too badly. He's already kind of a happy guy, but he's just looking pretty flat right now. You know, the big blocks of color looks a little bit, nah, it's okay. The red hat, you can see here, it's a nice crimson, and I went in and if I tip him over, it's only 1 layer so far, I need to do another, but I've got this like dark mix of crimson and purple underneath that's kind of working nicely to just make it look more shaded. It's one of the things with models and statues is you kind of have to add fake shading so they resemble, you know, it reads like it's supposed to the eye rather than like, oh, and like always looks nice depending on where you put it versus like, you know, relying on the actual shading to make this pure red under here look like it's in shadow. So like I'm gonna have darker skin tone kind of where the hat is and that kind of thing. I'm still on the fence about this beard. It's very dirty. Obviously it was, I think, white initially. You can see maybe on the eyebrows, probably pure white before it got buried underground by time. So we'll see what I end up going with. It does look kind of nice. This kind of like almost mottled brown blonde, but it does obviously need some work regardless. So I'll be painting on that a bit. Let me see. Oh, yeah. So the patch on the hat. So the difference in reflectivity, you can still kind of see where the patch is. Luckily, the texturing did do some work. I should have probably textured more up here. I think it's where it's most obvious. Light from above also is going to hit this lip the most, so that's a little unfortunate. But I think for the most part, when you're just looking at them, you can't really tell. It's pretty nice. So not too unhappy with it. Just could have been a little better. Oh, and the last part here is the eyes. So you'll notice these are not actually the same material as the rest of him. These are, I think, plastic. They were probably very, very pretty when they were initially installed. But now they are very foggy. I can't imagine why, when this was a home for insects. But yeah, I'm going to go in and we're going to get some like nice white and some like gray to make that pop. And then I'm probably just going to leave those as is because painting over them are going to look, well, really, really, really weird. You really don't want whatever texture the eyes are to match the texture of the skin. That's just a recipe for the uncanny valley. They're kind of a little bit, he looks like he might be a little have a few cataracts perhaps, but he's pretty happy otherwise. So I think I'm going to leave them like that. Glass eyes are really the piece de resistance in any statue. Even like chocolate statues, when they make them, they have separate eyes made of like glossy chocolate for that exact reason. So this is just the first pass on painting. I'll be doing a bunch more layers and I'll check in with you. Round 2 of painting's over. Got an update for you guys. You can see here the nice underbrims kind of coming together nicely. I've added in some whites in the eyes there. Some shading on the wood. Getting some color on the little tools there, a little silver. Lots of black on the shoes. And of course, this wonderful, majestic white beard. It's making him just look so jolly. I'm actually quite pleased with how he's coming along. Fun update. So as you can see, I've finished painting for the most part. We've got all our layers on here now. Nice green, nice blue, nice black. The texturing on those boots, man, that took a while to get all the paint little crevices. But if you can get little tools in here, little silver on the pliers. Key thing here is that with all the colors on, I decided to try more shading. So this forced shading, similar to how the hat has that shading underneath. And I've got some, little highlights and shadows on the box. I went, hey, I'll try that on his face, and it looks like weird makeup for the most part. It's not bad, but it does make him look just a little bit more haggard and not as sunlit and cute. So I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna cover that up, and then I think it'll be time to varnish. Here we have the final paint. I'm keeping it pretty simple, just for the sake of, being fairly new at this. But I've gone in here and we've, cleared up that shading from earlier. A little bit left on like the inside of the nose, a little bit on the lips, but for the most part we're keeping that pretty simple. I've got a little bit of highlight to the top of the nose here, and then the top of the cheeks, just to give a little bit impression of depth. And then I've taken a dry white and mixed brush to add some highlights on top of the folds of the fabric, and some shadows, just again, subtle ones. Just add a little bit of sheen, a little bit extra pop there. And then, of course, the hat, where it adds the most, with these nice folds they've sculpted in. You can see I took like a nice light pink and very lightly did it in there. It's a little bit harder to make it look as natural as I was hoping, just because of the rough nature of the sculpt. But that's okay. I think it came out pretty well. It was important that I did a nice little highlight on the rim here. Otherwise, the cohesion of the entire thing would look a little off. So I made sure to also make his eyes white, so he pop a little better. And so it doesn't look quite as soulless. He's just like a nice little guy who's, again, he's a little shiny eyes, but he's a fake creature, so that's fine. So we're going to take this gnome, who's looking quite happy, and we're going to now add a layer of varnish, or I believe shellac, which should really help protect him against the elements and stop this from happening again. Got a guy in the workshop here. Got bullseye shellac, which you can see. It's a finisher and sealer. They always advertise them for wood or something, because that's what they generally are used for, but you can use them obviously on projects like this. And I'm just taking a really crummy brush that I don't plan on having live past this project, and just applying a layer, over the top. My brushwork here while I'm holding the phone is not the best, but you get the idea. We're just going to cover him in 2 or 3 layers of this to really seal him in. It'll give it a little bit nice shiny coat, and we'll get to the final after that. A few hours later, here we are. It's our boy. He's nice and varnished up, a little glossy, and looking quite proper. He's going to withstand the elements fairly well, though hopefully he'll go in a place that's not just out in the garden. You can see here his hat didn't blend quite as perfectly as I was hoping, but it is pretty close. Having not done this before, I don't think if you're not looking for it, I don't think you'll notice. And this is still better than having a giant hole in his head, as well as the patched up hole down there. And yeah, check him out. Gnome on the porch. Gnome in the garden, close to where he was dug up. And Gnome on a fancy chair. And yeah, I'm hanging out with our very, very, very large plants. What a good lad. Hopefully he'll be a good gift come Christmas. Thanks for watching.